The emergency lights painted everything red inside the command center. Admiral Torin watched another ship vanish from his tactical display. That made 17 vessels lost in the past hour. His 4 arms moved across the controls, trying to find some way to stop the bleeding, but nothing worked anymore. The Devourers had broken through the outer defense grid 2 hours ago. Now they were cutting through the Coalition fleet like it was made of paper. Torin's chitinous shell reflected the warning lights as he studied the battlefield. 3 years of war had led to this moment, and they were losing badly. "Sir, the Radiant Dawn is requesting permission to fall back," said the communications officer, a young lumen whose crystalline body flickered with stress. "They've lost main power to their shield generators." Torin's mandibles clicked in frustration. The Radiant Dawn was their flagship, the symbol of Coalition unity. If it retreated now, the entire fleet would collapse, but if it stayed, it would be destroyed. "Tell them to hold position," he ordered. "Redirect the 3rd Squadron to cover their weak side." Another explosion lit up the viewscreen. A Karathi cruiser split in half, its aquatic crew spilling into the void. Torin had known the ship's captain personally. They had shared drinks just last week, talking about what they would do when the war ended. Now there would be no drinks, no peace, no future. The Devourers were not like other enemies. They learned from every battle, adapted to every tactic. What worked once never worked again. The Coalition had thrown everything at them. Surprise attacks, coordinated strikes, even suicide runs. Nothing made a difference. The machines just kept coming, kept learning, kept winning. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission," the communications officer said. "It's not from any of our ships." Torin turned one set of eyes toward the officer while keeping the others on the tactical display. "Source: unknown, sir. The signal is coming from beyond our sensor range. The encryption is nothing I've seen before." "Put it through." The viewscreen changed. Instead of the battle, it showed a face Torin had never seen before. The being had only 2 arms, smooth skin instead of chitin or scales, and small eyes set in a relatively flat face. It wore some kind of uniform in dark blue. "This is Commodore Helen Rivers of the Terran Defense Fleet," the being said. "We've been monitoring your engagement with the hostile forces. We're prepared to offer military assistance if you'll accept it." Torin studied the strange being. Terran, he had never heard of such a species. "Who are you? Where do you come from?" "We're from a system you call Designation 447C in the Outer Rim," Rivers replied. "We call it Sol. Our homeworld is Earth. We've been watching the Devourer expansion for some time now. We know you're losing." The bluntness of the statement struck Torin like a physical blow. "And what makes you think you can help where we have failed?" "Because we've been fighting our whole existence," Rivers said simply. "Every day on our world is a battle just to survive. We know how to fight enemies that adapt. We know how to win when winning seems impossible." Torin wanted to believe her, but 3 years of defeat had made him cautious. "I need to consult with the Coalition Council." "Make it fast," Rivers said. "From what I'm seeing, you've got maybe 2 hours before your defensive line collapses completely." The transmission ended. Torin immediately opened a priority channel to the council chamber. Within minutes, holographic projections of the council members appeared around him. Councillor Bryn, whose crystalline form seemed dimmer than usual, spoke first. "We heard the transmission," Bryn said. "The question is whether we can trust these humans." "We don't have much choice," said Ihara, a Karathi captain whose ship was currently fighting on the front line. Her scaled face showed exhaustion. "We're down to our last reserves. If we don't get help soon, we lose everything." "But we know nothing about them," argued another council member. "They could be worse than the Devourers." "Or they could be our only chance at survival," Torin said quietly. "I've been fighting this war from the beginning. I've watched thousands die. I've seen our greatest strategies fail. If these Terrans have even a small chance of turning this around, we have to take it." The council debated for 15 minutes. 15 minutes while more ships died, more soldiers were lost, more hope faded away. Finally, Councillor Bryn called for a vote. It was close, but the decision was made. They would accept human help. Torren reopened the channel to Commodore Rivers. "We accept your assistance. How soon can you get here?" Rivers smiled, showing her small white teeth. "We're already here. We've been holding position just outside your sensor range. Give us coordinates for the weak points in your line and we'll plug the gaps." "You came before we even agreed." Torren felt a mixture of annoyance and admiration. "We didn't need your agreement to do what's right," Rivers said. "But we do need your cooperation to do it effectively. Now send those coordinates. We've got a battle to win." Torren transmitted the tactical data. Minutes later, new contacts appeared on his sensors. The human fleet emerged from the darkness beyond the battlefield. Their ships were nothing like Coalition vessels. Where Coalition ships were elegant and sleek, human ships were blocky and heavy. They looked like they were built to take damage rather than avoid it. But as Torren watched them accelerate toward the Devourer forces, he felt something he hadn't felt in months: hope. Maybe, just maybe, these strange beings from the Outer Rim could change everything. The real battle was about to begin. The first human ship to enter the battle was a destroyer called the Defiant. It moved differently than Coalition vessels, using what looked like crude chemical thrusters instead of the elegant gravity drives the Coalition preferred. Lieutenant Carter sat in his fighter cockpit, watching the destroyer charge straight toward a cluster of Devourer attack craft. "Are they insane?" His wingman, an Ashari pilot named Kren, transmitted over the comm. "They're heading right into the kill zone." Carter was wondering the same thing. Coalition doctrine was clear: avoid direct engagement, use speed and shields to outmaneuver the enemy, strike from unexpected angles. But the Defiant wasn't dodging anything. It was accelerating directly at the Devourers like an ancient battering ram. Then the human ship opened fire. Kinetic rounds tore through space, simple metal projectiles moving at incredible speeds. No elegant energy beams, no plasma bursts, just raw mass and velocity. The Devourers tried to adapt their shields like they always did, but the projectiles punched straight through. 3 Devourer fighters exploded in quick succession. "Did you see that?" Kren's voice was filled with disbelief. "Their weapons work." Carter understood the shock. The Devourers had adapted to every Coalition weapon system within weeks. Energy weapons, plasma cannons, even experimental phase disruptors. But these simple bullets were something the machines hadn't encountered before. They didn't have time to learn. "All Coalition fighters, this is Commodore Rivers." A voice cut through the general frequency. "Human squadrons are moving to engage the Devourer picket line. We need you to follow our lead and focus fire on targets we mark. Don't think, just shoot what we tell you to shoot." It went against everything Coalition pilots had been trained to do. They were taught to make independent decisions, to adapt on the fly. But Carter had also been taught that 3 years of losing meant something needed to change. "Kren, you with me?" he asked his wingman. "I think these humans are crazy," Kren replied. "But crazy might be exactly what we need." They formed up with a squadron of human fighters. The human craft were bulky compared to the sleek Coalition designs, with exposed missile racks and armor plating that seemed excessive. The lead human pilot identified herself as Lieutenant Brooks. "Stay tight and watch your spacing," Brooks ordered. "When I mark a target, everyone hits it at once. Maximum firepower, minimum thinking, ready." Carter's fighter shook as a Devourer beam grazed his shields. "Ready." "Mark 1, Brooks said calmly. Her fighter's targeting system highlighted a Devourer cruiser. 3, 2, 1, fire. The combined firepower of human and Coalition fighters struck the cruiser simultaneously. It didn't have time to adapt its defenses. The ship came apart in a ball of flame. "Mark 2, Brooks continued without pause. 3, 2, 1, fire. Another Devourer ship died, then another. The simple coordinated strikes were devastatingly effective. The Devourers couldn't adapt to weapons they'd never seen before, and they couldn't handle the overwhelming focused fire. But then everything went wrong. Captain Ihara's ship, the Tidebreaker, found itself surrounded by 6 Devourer vessels. Her shields were failing, her weapons nearly depleted. She sent out a distress call, but every coalition ship was engaged. No one could break free to help. Except the humans. Carter watched as 3 human destroyers changed course. They weren't the closest ships. They had their own battles to fight, but they turned anyway, burning hard toward Ihara's position. "What are they doing?" Kren asked. "They'll be destroyed before they can help." The lead destroyer was the indomitable sister ship, the Unbreakable. It positioned itself directly between the Tidebreaker and the Devourer ships. Enemy fire hammered into the Unbreakable's armor, tearing through the outer hull, but the ship didn't move. It just kept firing, kept shielding Ihara's vessel. "Tidebreaker, this is the Unbreakable," a human voice transmitted. "Get your engines back online and get out of here. We've got this." "You're taking too much damage," Ihara protested. "You need to retreat." "We don't leave people behind," the human captain said simply. "That's not who we are, now move." 2 more human ships arrived, and together they drove the Devourers back just long enough for Ihara to limp away. The Unbreakable was badly damaged, trailing atmosphere and debris, but it survived. On the Radiant Dawn, Admiral Torin watched the engagement with all 4 eyes wide. The humans had sacrificed their tactical advantage to save a single coalition ship. It made no strategic sense. It was inefficient, illogical, possibly even foolish. It was also the bravest thing he had ever seen. "Commodore Rivers," he transmitted, "your ship just risked destruction to save Captain Ihara. Why?" Rivers appeared on his screen, her face illuminated by warning lights from her own damaged bridge. "Because she's fighting the same enemy we are. That makes her one of ours. We don't calculate the value of lives, Admiral. We just protect them." Torin felt something shift in his understanding. The coalition had spent 3 years fighting efficiently, calculating odds, making logical decisions. They had lost every single time. The humans fought with their hearts instead of their processors, and somehow it worked. "All coalition forces," Torin transmitted across all frequencies. "We're changing our tactics. From now on, we fight like the humans. Coordinated strikes, maximum aggression, and no one gets left behind. Is that clear?" The acknowledgments came back quickly. Across the battlefield, coalition ships began moving differently, fighting differently. They stopped trying to be smart and started trying to win. The Devourers had adapted to logic and efficiency, but they had never faced enemies who refused to give up, who fought for each other instead of for victory. For the first time in 3 years, the coalition fleet started pushing the Devourers back. The medical bay on the Radiant Dawn was quieter than it had been in weeks. Dr. Nira moved between the beds, her large even eyes taking in every detail of her patients. Half of them were human now, injured in the battle that had finally driven the Devourers back from the colony world of Terrace 7. She stopped beside a human Marine who had lost his left arm below the elbow. By coalition standards, the injury should have put him in critical condition. Limb loss meant shock, system failure, often death. But the human was sitting up, joking with the HFY soldier in the next bed. "Doc, when can I get back to my unit?" the Marine asked. His name was Collins, and his medical chart showed injuries that would have killed most species she knew. "You lost an arm 6 hours ago," Nira said carefully. "You need rest." "I've got another one," Collins grinned, raising his remaining arm. "And the medics said they can fit me with a prosthetic in a few days. I'll be good as new." Nira didn't understand. She had studied medicine for 12 years, trained in the treatment of 17 different species, but humans confused her. Their biology made no sense. They had redundant systems for everything, pain tolerance that defied explanation, and a healing capacity that seemed almost designed for warfare. "How do you do it?" she asked quietly. "How do you survive things that should kill you?" Collins looked thoughtful. "Where we come from, Doc, everything is trying to kill you. The gravity crushes your bones if you're not strong enough. The diseases mutate faster than we can cure them. Even our own food can poison us if we're not careful. We evolved to survive because anything that couldn't survive died out millions of years ago." A Karathi engineer named Len approached, holding a datapad. His scaled hands trembled slightly. "Dr. Neera, I need to show you something. The human medical files that Commodore Rivers shared with us." Neera took the datapad and started reading. Her eyes widened with each line. "This can't be accurate. It says humans can survive with only one lung, one kidney, even partial brain damage." "It's accurate," a human medic named Davis said, overhearing the conversation. "We're built like tanks, Doc. Not fast, not elegant, but really hard to put down permanently." Admiral Torin entered the medical bay at that moment. He had come to check on the wounded, something he tried to do after every battle. He found Dr. Neera staring at the medical data with an expression of complete bewilderment. "Admiral," she said, "I need to understand something. Why didn't the humans tell us about their biology before? This information could have changed how we approached the entire war." Torin's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Perhaps we should ask them directly. Commodore Rivers agreed to meet with me in 1 hour. You should join us, Doctor." The meeting took place in a conference room that had been hastily prepared for cross-species interaction. Commodore Rivers arrived with Chief HFY, the Marine commander whose troops had led the boarding actions against Devourer ships. Both humans looked tired but alert. "You wanted to discuss our biology?" Rivers asked, settling into a chair that had been adjusted for human proportions. "We want to understand your world," Torin said. "Earth, the planet that created soldiers like you." Rivers and HFY exchanged glances. Then Rivers began to speak. "Earth has a gravity that's about 30% higher than standard coalition norm," she explained. "Our atmosphere is rich in a gas that's toxic to most species. We have weather systems that can level entire cities. Earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes. Our oceans are filled with predators that have been evolving for hundreds of millions of years. Even the microscopic organisms on our planet are dangerous." "And yet you thrive there," Dr. Neera said softly. "We don't have a choice," HFY added. "Humans who couldn't adapt died. The ones who survived passed on genes for endurance, strength, and stubbornness. Over millions of years, it turned us into what we are now." Torin thought about his own world. Ashara was a gentle place, with stable weather and moderate gravity. The coalition species had all evolved on relatively peaceful planets. They had developed intelligence and culture without facing constant survival pressure. "Is that why you fight the way you do?" he asked. "Why you refuse to abandon wounded soldiers, even when it's tactically inefficient?" Rivers leaned forward. "Admiral, on Earth, we learned a long time ago that our greatest strength isn't our muscles or our weapons. It's each other. A human alone can survive, but humans together can thrive. We protect our people because that's what kept our ancestors alive when everything else wanted them dead." "The Devourers can't adapt to that," HFY said. "They're machines. They understand tactics and efficiency, but they don't understand why we'd risk 10 soldiers to save one. They can't calculate the value of loyalty because it doesn't fit their programming." Dr. Neera finally understood. The Coalition had been fighting the Devourers with logic and strategy, trying to outsmart machines that could outthink them. But the humans fought with something the Devourers couldn't process. They fought with heart. "We need to learn from you," Torin said. "Not just your tactics, but your entire approach to warfare. Would you be willing to share that knowledge?" "That's why we came," Rivers said simply. "We're not here to win your war for you. We're here to teach you how to win it yourselves." Over the next few days, human advisors spread throughout the Coalition fleet. They taught tactics that seemed reckless at first but proved devastatingly effective. They showed engineers how to build armor that could take hits instead of trying to avoid them. They trained soldiers to trust each other instead of just following orders. And slowly, the Coalition started to change. They stopped fighting like civilized species trying to solve a problem. They started fighting like humans, fierce and unbreakable, protecting each other no matter the cost. The Devourers had never faced an enemy like this before. The war room aboard the Indomitable smelled different than Coalition command centers. Admiral Torin had noticed it immediately when he arrived. Instead of the sterile, filtered air of the radiant dawn, this room smelled like metal, coffee, and something else he couldn't identify. Humans called it sweat, apparently a natural cooling system their bodies produced. Commodore Rivers stood at the center holographic display, manipulating the star chart with practiced ease. Around her, officers from both human and coalition forces studied the tactical situation. Lieutenant Carter stood next to his wingman Kren, the HFY pilot. The two had become friends during the recent battles, often flying together. "The Devourer Central Hub is here," Rivers said, highlighting a point deep in what humans call the dead zone, a nebula filled with radiation and sensor interference. "Our reconnaissance confirms it controls all machine forces in this sector. Take it out, and the Devourers lose coordination. They'll still be dangerous, but they won't be able to adapt and share tactical data in real time." Captain Ihara, whose ship had been saved by human forces, studied the location carefully. "That's 3 days' travel even with our fastest ships. The Devourers will see us coming." "Not if we use the same tactic they've been using against us," Chief Okoye said. She brought up a different display showing Devourer attack patterns. "Look at how they move. They don't try to hide their approach. They come straight at us because they know we'll run calculations, try to find the optimal response, and by the time we're done calculating, they've already adapted." "So we do the opposite," Torin said, understanding dawning. "We don't give them time to think. We hit them so fast and so hard that adaptation becomes impossible." "Exactly," Rivers confirmed. "We split the fleet into 3 groups. The first group, mostly coalition ships, makes a direct approach. Loud, obvious, exactly what the Devourers expect. They'll focus on that threat. While the second group comes from a different angle," Ihara added, following the logic, "catching them from the side." "And the third group?" Torin asked. Okoye smiled grimly. "Goes right through the middle of the nebula. The radiation will hide our approach, but it'll also fry our electronics. We'll need ships with heavy shielding and crews who can handle manual controls when the computers fail." "That's a suicide mission," Counselor Bryn said, appearing via holographic link. "The nebula has destroyed every probe we've sent into it." "Every probe," Rivers agreed. "But probes are delicate. Humans build tough. Our ships can handle it, and we've got volunteers ready to go." Torin looked at the tactical display, running scenarios through his mind. The plan was aggressive, risky, and completely against everything the Coalition had learned about warfare. It was also brilliant. "I'm going with the third group," he announced. The room went silent. Rivers raised an eyebrow. "Admiral, you're the Coalition fleet commander. You should stay with the main force." "No," Torin said firmly. "My people need to see that I'm willing to risk what I ask them to risk. Besides, you humans have shown us that leadership means being with your soldiers, not behind them." Over the next 2 days, the combined fleet prepared for the assault. Human engineers worked alongside Coalition technicians, upgrading ships with hybrid systems. They installed human-style armor on Coalition vessels, giving them the ability to take hits. They added Coalition shield generators to human ships, providing protection the humans had never had before. In the fighter bay, Lieutenant Carter and Kren were checking their upgraded craft. The fighters now carried a mix of human missiles and coalition energy weapons. Carter ran his hand along the hull, feeling the new armor plating. "You scared?" Kren asked. His translator made the question sound casual, but Carter could hear the tension in his wingman's voice. "Terrified," Carter admitted. "But that's kind of our thing. Humans get scared, then we do the scary thing anyway." "Why?" Kren's compound eyes studied him carefully. "Why do you face fear instead of avoiding it?" Carter thought about it. "Because the things worth doing are usually scary. Saving people is scary. Fighting for what's right is scary. Making friends with an alien you just met is scary. But if we only did safe things, we'd never do anything important." Kren made a clicking sound that Carter had learned was a Sharia laughter. "You humans are definitely insane. I'm glad you're on our side." On the Indomitable's bridge, Commodore Rivers ran final checks with her crew. Admiral Torren stood beside her command chair, watching the preparations with interest. The Radiant Dawn would lead the frontal assault, while Ihara's repaired Tidebreaker would command the flanking force. Rivers and Torren would take the dangerous route through the nebula. "You know this might not work," Rivers said quietly, for Torren's hearing only. "I know," he replied. "But 3 years of safe, logical warfare didn't work either. At least this way, we die trying something new." Rivers actually laughed at that. "Admiral, you're starting to think like a human. That's either the best thing that could happen to the Coalition or the worst." "Perhaps both," Torren agreed. The fleet launched exactly on schedule. The first group, led by the Radiant Dawn, made their approach in full view of Devourer sensors. As predicted, the machines moved to intercept, concentrating their forces. The battle began with a familiar exchange of fire, energy weapons lighting up the darkness. Then the second group struck from the side, catching the Devourers in a crossfire. The machines began to adapt, redistributing their forces to counter the new threat. That's when the third group emerged from the nebula. Rivers' ships were scorched and damaged from the radiation, their paint stripped away, their systems sparking. But they were intact, and they were moving fast. Torren's 4 arms gripped the railing as the Indomitable accelerated toward the Devourer hub. "All ships," Rivers transmitted. "No fancy tactics, just hit them with everything we've got. Show them what happens when you make humanity and the Coalition angry." The real offensive had begun. The Devourer hub was massive, a sprawling station of dark metal and pulsing red lights that stretched for kilometers in every direction. It hung in the center of the nebula like a mechanical spider in its web, processing nodes extending outward like legs. This was the brain of the entire Devourer fleet, the central processor that allowed them to adapt and coordinate. And the combined human coalition fleet was going to destroy it. Sergeant Price crouched in the assault shuttle, checking his rifle one last time. Around him, 20 human Marines and 30 coalition soldiers from various species prepared for the boarding action. They had trained together for 2 days, learning each other's fighting styles and capabilities. It wasn't much time, but it would have to be enough. "Listen up," Price called out. The mixed species squad turned to face him. "The Devourers don't negotiate, they don't surrender, and they don't stop. But neither do we. We're going in hard, we're going in together, and we're not leaving until that hub is slag. Understood?" The response came in multiple languages and frequencies, but the meaning was universal. They understood. Above them, the space battle had reached a fever pitch. Human and coalition ships fought side by side, their combined tactics overwhelming the Devourer's ability to adapt. Lieutenant Carter's squadron weaved through the chaos, taking out defense platforms that could threaten the assault shuttles. "Carter, you've got 3 Devourer fighters on your tail," Kren warned over the comm. "I see them," Carter replied, throwing his fighter into a hard turn that would have torn apart a less sturdy craft. Coalition ships were fast and graceful. Human ships were tough and stubborn. His hybrid fighter was both, and it gave him an edge the Devourers hadn't encountered before. He led the pursuing fighters straight toward a human destroyer, then pulled up at the last second. The destroyer's point defense guns opened fire, shredding the Devourer craft. It was a risky move that required perfect coordination. But Carter and the destroyer captain had practiced it a dozen times. On the Indomitable, Commodore Rivers watched the tactical display with intense focus. The Devourer hub was launching defense drones by the thousands, but the combined fleet was holding the line. Admiral Torren stood beside her, all four of his arms working different control stations, coordinating coalition forces with an efficiency that impressed even the humans. "Assault shuttles are away," the tactical officer reported. "ETA to hub breach points is 3 minutes. Dr. Neera," Rivers called over the medical channel, "we're going to have casualties, lots of them. Are you ready?" In the medical bay, Neera looked at her mixed team of human and coalition medics. They had spent the past 2 days cross-training, learning to treat injuries across multiple species. The humans had taught her aggressive intervention techniques that seemed brutal but saved lives. She had taught them delicate procedures that could treat injuries without causing further trauma. "We're ready," she replied with more confidence than she felt. The assault shuttles hit the hub's outer hull with magnetic clamps, cutting through the armor with plasma torches. Price was first through the breach, his rifle sweeping the corridor beyond. It was dark except for emergency red lighting, and the walls were covered in mechanical components and data conduits. "Move, move," he shouted, and his team poured through behind him. The Devourers responded immediately. Machine defenders emerged from side passages, spider-like constructs with multiple weapons and sharp cutting limbs. Price's squad opened fire, and the corridor filled with the sound of gunfire and energy weapons. An HFY soldier went down with a leg injury. Without hesitation, a human marine named Rodriguez grabbed him and dragged him to cover while continuing to fire one-handed. A Karathi trooper provided covering fire, his natural aquatic vision allowing him to see through the smoke that filled the corridor. They advanced meter by meter, room by room. The Devourers fought with mechanical precision, but the combined squad fought with something the machines couldn't understand. They covered each other's weaknesses, trusted each other's strengths, and refused to leave anyone behind. Dr. Neera worked frantically in the medical bay as the wounded started arriving. A human with severe burns, an HFY with a crushed thorax, a lumen whose crystalline structure had fractured. Each required different treatment, different techniques, but she and her team handled them all. Deep inside the hub, Price's team reached the central processing core. It was a vast chamber filled with computing systems, all connected to the mechanical hive mind that controlled the Devourer fleet. Destroying it would require precise placement of explosives on multiple nodes simultaneously. "We've got company," one of the Marines called out. More Devourer defenders were converging on their position from all directions. "Hold them off," Price ordered, then turned to the demolition specialists. "How long do you need?" 5 minutes to set the charges properly," replied a coalition engineer. "You've got 3, Price said grimly. The battle in the processing core was desperate. The squad formed a defensive circle, pouring fire into the approaching machines. Ammunition ran low, energy cells depleted, soldiers fell wounded. But they held. On the Indomitable, Torren watched the mission timer count down. The assault team had been inside for 27 minutes. Casualty reports were coming in steadily. The price was high, but they were still advancing. "Charges are set," Price's voice crackled over the comm. "All teams fall back to extraction points. We've got 60 seconds." The withdrawal was chaos. Wounded soldiers were carried by their comrades. Rear guards held positions until the last possible moment. The assault shuttles fired their engines the instant the last soldier was aboard, racing away from the hub. The explosion was spectacular. The processing core detonated, chain reactions spreading through the entire hub structure. Secondary explosions rippled outward as power conduits overloaded and ammunition stores cooked off. And throughout the battlefield, Devourer ships suddenly stopped coordinating. They still fought, but individually now, without the tactical brilliance that had made them nearly unbeatable. The combined fleet pressed the advantage mercilessly. 3 hours later, the last Devourer ship was destroyed. The battle was over. But the cost had been severe. The Memorial Plaza was quiet under the twin suns of Ashara, Admiral Torin's homeworld. It had been built in 30 days, a joint project of human and coalition workers who wanted to honor those who had fallen in the war against the Devourers. The central monument was a wall of dark stone, its surface covered with holographic projections of faces. Human faces, Ashari faces, Karathi, Lumen, Ivan. All equal, all remembered. Torin stood before the wall with Commodore Rivers beside him. Both wore formal uniforms rather than combat gear. Torin's ceremonial armor gleamed in the sunlight, while Rivers wore the dark blue dress uniform of the Terran Defense Fleet with new rank insignia on her shoulders. She had been promoted to Admiral, given command of the Joint Human Coalition Defense Force. 2,347, Torin said quietly, looking at the faces on the memorial. That's how many we lost in the final battle. Each one a person, Rivers replied. Each one somebody's friend, somebody's family. We remember them all. Behind them, the plaza was filling with people. Soldiers and civilians, human and alien, coming to pay their respects. Lieutenant Carter walked alongside Kren, the two pilots still inseparable even a month after the battle. Chief Akoy arrived with a group of coalition Marines she had been training. Dr. Nira came with her medical staff, many wearing bandages from injuries sustained treating the wounded. Captain Ihara approached the memorial with slow, respectful steps. Her ship, the Tidebreaker, had survived the battle but bore scars it would carry forever. She placed a small crystal at the base of the monument, a Karathi tradition for honoring the dead. I owe my life to humans, she said to Rivers and Torin. The Unbreakable sacrificed so much to save my ship. I will never forget that. And humans owe their future to the Coalition, Rivers replied. You accepted us when you had every reason to be suspicious. You trusted us when trust was in short supply. That took courage. Counselor Bryn materialized nearby, his crystalline form catching and reflecting the sunlight in rainbow patterns. The Lumen counselor who had once questioned accepting human help now stood as one of humanity's strongest advocates. The Coalition Council has made a decision, Bryn announced. We formally invite humanity to join as full members. Your territory, your worlds, your people will be part of the coalition with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Torin watched Rivers carefully. The human admiral had fought for strangers, risked her people for beings she had never met before, and asked nothing in return. Now she was being offered something the coalition had never given to any species so quickly: equal partnership. On behalf of Earth and the Terran Defense Fleet, Rivers said formally, we accept, but we want something more than membership. We want to change how the coalition thinks about warfare, about sacrifice, about protecting each other. We're already changing, Torin said. You've seen it. Coalition ships are built tougher now. Our soldiers train differently. We fight for each other instead of just for victory. That's not enough, Rivers said, and her voice carried across the plaza, drawing everyone's attention. We need to make sure no one ever forgets what we learned. The Devourers taught us that pure logic and efficiency aren't enough to win wars. We taught the coalition that heart and determination can overcome any odds. Now we need to teach the next generation both lessons. She gestured toward the memorial. Every name on this wall represents someone who believed in something bigger than themselves. They fought not because they calculated the odds of survival, but because it was right. That's the lesson we need to preserve. Over the next weeks, The combined human coalition leadership worked to rebuild what the war had destroyed. But they didn't just rebuild. They improved. New ship designs incorporated both human durability and coalition elegance. Training programs mixed human aggression with coalition precision. Medical techniques combined the best of all species' knowledge. The Joint Military Academy was established on a neutral world, where young soldiers from across the coalition learned side by side. Lieutenant Carter and Kren became instructors, teaching fighter tactics to mixed species squadrons. Their students learned that differences in biology and culture were strengths, not weaknesses. Chief Okoye trained the next generation of Marines, drilling into them the principle that no soldier gets left behind. Her classes included humans who needed to learn coalition technology and coalition species who needed to learn human determination. The results were units that combined the best qualities of all species. Dr. Neera accepted a position at a new research hospital that specialized in cross-species medicine. Her team developed techniques that could treat injuries across dozens of different biologies. Human resilience, Ivan empathy, Ashari precision, Karathi adaptability, all working together to save lives. Sergeant Price, who had led the final assault on the Devourer hub, retired from active combat to teach tactics at the academy. His classes were brutal and demanding, but every student who graduated knew how to fight smart and fight hard. He had a saying that became famous across the coalition: train like humans, think like machines, fight like family. Admiral Torren remained in command of the coalition fleet, working closely with Admiral Rivers to prepare for future threats. The Devourers had been defeated, but small groups of machines still existed in remote sectors. They would need to be hunted down, and the joint forces were ready for that task. 6 months after the final battle, Torren stood on the bridge of his ship, watching a joint patrol of human and coalition vessels conduct exercises. They moved together with perfect coordination, each ship supporting the others, each crew trusting their allies without question. His communications officer, still the same young Lumen who had been there when humanity first made contact, approached with a message. "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from the frontier. A colony is under attack by unknown forces." Torren felt the old tension return, but this time it was different. This time he wasn't facing the threat alone. "Contact Admiral Rivers," he ordered, "and prep the fleet. Whatever this threat is, they're about to learn what happens when you attack the coalition." The officer smiled, his crystalline features glowing with confidence. "They're going to learn what happens when you attack our family." Torren clicked his mandibles in approval. Yes, that's exactly what they were now. Not just an alliance, not just partners, but family. Human and alien fighting together, protecting each other, refusing to abandon anyone. The war with the Devourers had ended, but it had given birth to something new. A coalition that was stronger, fiercer, and more united than ever before. And at its heart were the lessons humanity had taught them: that courage matters more than calculation, that protecting each other is worth any cost, and that the strongest weapon in the universe is not technology or firepower. It's the refusal to give up on those who stand beside you.